I hadn't seen her face in over 20 years. Yet, the moment our eyes met again, it felt as if the past had never left me. She was sitting in that small hospital waiting room, her hands trembling over a worn-out purse, her hair now a faded silver. For a second, I almost didn't recognize her. But then, I saw those eyes, sharp once, cold as winter, now softened by age and regret. I froze. My breath caught in my throat. My heart was racing, not from anger, but from the ghosts that still whispered inside me. She didn't see me right away. I stood there, just staring at her, wondering how life had brought us to this place. Maybe this was what people called fate, the kind that doesn't announce itself but just appears quietly, demanding to be faced. I wanted to walk away. I really did. But something in me needed to stay. My name is Elijah. And once, when I was just a 15-year-old boy, that woman, Mrs. Langford, made me believe I wasn't good enough to exist. It started in a classroom that always smelled of chalk and old paper. The walls were covered with faded maps, and the light from the window would fall unevenly across the rows of wooden desks. I used to sit in the third row, near the heater. Not too close to the front, because I didn't want to draw attention, and not too far back, because I didn't want to look like I didn't care. I remember the first time she said my name. Not because of what she said, but how she said it, like it was something bitter on her tongue. Elijah Turner, she said, her voice sharp. Do you even understand what you're reading? The class turned to look at me. My hands were sweating, gripping the edge of my notebook. I'd been reading aloud from a passage in our literature book, a passage I'd practiced at home for hours the night before. But all I could say was, yes, ma'am. She smirked. You should focus more on pronunciation. You sound unpolished. The room went silent. I heard a few giggles. Someone whispered my name and laughed. That was the first time I felt small. The first time I realized that knowledge and effort weren't always enough when someone had already decided who you were. From that day on, she never called on me again to read aloud. Instead, she would make little comments, small cuts disguised as advice. Maybe you should try a simpler book. Or, not everyone is meant for higher education, Elijah. Each word left a mark, one I didn't know how to erase. I tried to make my parents proud. My mom worked 2 jobs. My dad was gone most nights, driving trucks across the state. They always told me, education will open doors. But Mrs. Langford, she made me believe some doors were never meant for people like me. One afternoon, I stayed after class to ask for help. We had an essay due, and I wanted to do it right. I remember standing there, holding my paper in both hands. She didn't look up from her desk. What is it, Elijah? I just wanted to know if you could check this before I turn it in. She sighed, taking the pages like they were an inconvenience. Her eyes scanned the first few lines. This isn't your work. I blinked. What? There's no way you wrote this. It's too advanced. I did. She cut me off. Cheating will only make your failure worse. Her voice was calm, but every word stabbed like a blade. I remember standing there, frozen, my throat tight. I wanted to yell, to tell her she was wrong. But the words wouldn't come. Instead, I just nodded and walked away. That night, I tore the essay in half and threw it into the trash. The next morning, she told the class that some students didn't understand the value of honesty. I could feel everyone's eyes on me, burning holes into my back. After that, everything changed. I stopped participating. I stopped trying. I began to fade into the background, the quiet kid with his head down, always scribbling in his notebook but never speaking. But even silence wasn't enough to hide from her. One day, near the end of the semester, we were talking about a story, To Kill a Mockingbird. She asked the class, "What do you think the story teaches us about prejudice?" No one answered. The air felt heavy. Then her eyes landed on me. "Elijah, you must have some thoughts on this topic." The irony hit me so hard I almost laughed. But I didn't. I looked at her and said softly, "It teaches us that people sometimes judge what they don't understand." She raised an eyebrow. "And you think you understand that?" I said, "I think I live it." The room went quiet. You could hear the clock ticking on the wall. She didn't respond, just turned to the next student as if I hadn't spoken. But in that silence, I felt a strange kind of victory. After that, she avoided me even more. When graduation came, she didn't look at me once. I remember walking across that stage, holding my diploma like it was proof that I had survived something invisible. My mom was crying in the crowd, proud and unaware of the weight I carried. Years passed. I left that town, went to college, worked my way up, built a life that didn't depend on anyone's approval. But even as I achieved things, my first job, my first apartment, my first book published, I'd sometimes wake up with that same voice in my head, "You're not enough, Elijah." It took me years to unlearn it. And yet, here she was, sitting right in front of me in that hospital. The woman who once broke me now looked small, fragile, and lost. I didn't know whether to walk up to her or just leave. But life has a strange way of forcing closure on us when we least expect it. A nurse called her name. "Mrs. Langford." She looked up slowly, confusion flickering across her eyes. She was older, thinner, her hands trembling slightly. I noticed the wedding ring was gone. There was something lonely in her posture, the way she clutched her bag like it was her only comfort. She stood, but stumbled. Her papers fell from her lap, scattering across the floor. Before I could stop myself, I was already kneeling to pick them up. Our eyes met. For a heartbeat, neither of us spoke. "Elijah," she whispered. Her voice cracked around my name, not sharp this time, not cold. Just, uncertain. "Yes, ma'am," I said quietly. "It's me." Her eyes widened. I saw something flash behind them, recognition, then guilt, then a flicker of something else. Maybe fear. "You've grown," she said softly. I didn't expect to see you." "I didn't expect to see you either." She opened her mouth to speak, but nothing came out. The nurse called her again, and she nodded weakly before disappearing down the hallway. I stood there, still holding one of her papers, a medical document, I think. Her name printed neatly at the top, Margaret Langford. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept seeing her face, hearing her voice echoing in my head. I wasn't angry anymore, not really. Just, heavy. I thought about the boy I used to be, sitting in that third-row seat, desperate to prove his worth. And the man I had become, successful, confident, but still haunted by the words of one person who once had power over him. The next morning, I went back to the hospital. I don't even know why. Maybe I needed to know what happened to her. Maybe I needed to know if she remembered what she did. When I reached the nurse's desk, I asked about her. "Mrs. Langford," the nurse repeated. "She's in room 207. "Your family?" "No," I said. "Just, an old student." The nurse smiled faintly. "Then maybe she'll be glad to see you. She doesn't get many visitors." I walked down the hallway, my steps slow, each one echoing against the sterile floor. My heart felt like it was carrying both the past and the present in a single beat. Outside her room, I paused. I could hear her coughing softly inside. And for a second, I almost turned back. But then I heard her say something, my name. "Elijah." I wish I could tell him I'm sorry. My hand froze on the doorknob. She remembered. I stood there, silent, my throat tightening. 20 years had passed, and yet that simple whisper brought everything flooding back, the pain, the shame, the loneliness, and now, the strange warmth of hearing remorse. I took a deep breath and pushed the door open. When I stepped into the room, she turned her head slowly toward the sound. The window beside her bed let in a soft light, pale and quiet. Her skin looked fragile, her hands resting lightly on the thin blanket. For a moment, she didn't recognize me. Then her eyes widened again, and she whispered, "You came back." "I didn't plan to," I said softly. "But I heard you say my name." She blinked, confused, embarrassed maybe. "You heard that?" I nodded. I was right outside. A silence stretched between us. It wasn't uncomfortable, just heavy, full of years and unspoken words. I looked around the room. There were no flowers, no photos, no cards. Just a half-drunk cup of tea and the sound of a heart monitor beeping faintly. "I didn't know you were sick," I said. She gave a weak smile. "Cancer," she murmured. "It's been a while." I nodded again. I didn't know what to say. What could you say to someone who once broke you, who now looked like the one who'd been broken by time? She gestured toward the chair beside her bed. "Please, sit." I hesitated, then pulled the chair closer. My heart was still beating fast, but it wasn't fear anymore. It was something else, something closer to curiosity, maybe even compassion. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. I studied her face, the lines, the tired eyes, the small tremor in her fingers. She looked nothing like the woman who had once towered over me in that classroom, full of certainty and control. Finally, she said, "You must hate me." Her words landed softly, but I could feel the weight behind them. "I don't," I said quietly. She looked surprised. "You should." I leaned back, exhaling. "There was a time I did. A long time." Her eyes glistened. "I deserved that." I shrugged lightly. "Maybe. But hate's heavy. I carried it for years. It didn't make me feel any better. Just emptier." Tears welled up in her eyes. She turned her head slightly, staring at the window as if afraid to meet my gaze. "I was cruel," she said, her voice trembling. "To you. To others, maybe. But mostly to you. I knew it, even then. And I did it anyway." The words felt strange, hearing her admit it out loud. My chest tightened, but not from anger. It was more like release. "Why?" I asked. She swallowed hard. "Because I was afraid." "Of what?" "Of seeing someone rise above me. Of seeing someone with potential I could never reach. You were brilliant, Elijah. You were pure-hearted, curious, kind. You had everything I'd lost by then, hope. And I couldn't stand it." Her confession hung in the air, fragile and raw. I didn't know what to say. All those years, I had imagined this moment, rehearsed the words I'd throw at her, the truth I'd make her choke on. But sitting there, seeing her in that bed, I realized none of it mattered anymore. She continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "I saw your essay that day, and I knew you'd written it. I could see your heart in every line. But instead of lifting you up, I tried to break you down. Because I thought if you believed you were small, I could feel big again." Her lips trembled. "It was ugly. I was ugly." I closed my eyes for a moment. "You made me believe I wasn't enough." She nodded slowly. "I know. I've thought about that for years. I kept your name in my mind. Every time I met another student, every time I looked at my own reflection. I saw what I did to you." I looked at her hands, wrinkled now, fragile, almost translucent. "And I thought about my mother, about how she used to say that forgiveness isn't about setting the other person free, it's about setting yourself free. You remember the day we read To Kill a Mockingbird?" I asked quietly. She smiled faintly. "Of course I do. You said, I think I live it." That line never left me. I nodded. It never left me either. A tear slid down her cheek. You had every right to hate me. Every right to forget me. But the truth is, I never forgot you, Elijah. I followed your work, your books. I saw your interviews. I saw the man you became. And every time I did, I thought, maybe that's how grace looks when it grows from pain. Her voice cracked on the last word. I swallowed hard. Grace, I repeated. That's not something I learned easily. I'm sorry, she whispered again. For everything. The words filled the room, quiet but powerful. I felt something shift inside me, something I didn't even know was still locked away. I leaned forward, resting my hands on my knees. You know, I said, when I was a kid, I used to imagine running into you one day. I wanted you to see me, successful, confident, free. I wanted you to regret every word you ever said. But sitting here now, I realized that what I really wanted was just this. She looked at me, eyes wide. This? I nodded. The truth. A real moment. Not anger. Not revenge. Just honesty. Her lips trembled. Then maybe this is it. For a while, we just sat there. The machines hummed quietly. Outside, the world went on, footsteps in the hall, voices of nurses, the faint rustle of life continuing. Finally, she said, "You've forgiven me, haven't you?" I looked at her, and I could see the fear in her eyes, not fear of death, but fear of leaving something undone. "I have," I said softly. "A long time ago. I just didn't realize it until now." Her shoulders relaxed. She exhaled, a faint smile crossing her lips. "Thank you," she whispered. "You have no idea what that means to me." "I think I do," I said. We talked for a while after that. She asked about my life, my mother, my writing, the places I'd traveled. She listened, genuinely this time, without interruption or judgment. It was strange and beautiful in its own quiet way. When I finally stood to leave, she reached for my hand. Her fingers were cold, her grip weak, but her touch was sincere. "Elijah," she said, "I used to think teaching was about shaping others. But maybe it's about letting others shape you. I wish I'd learned that sooner." I smiled faintly. "Maybe you just did." She chuckled softly, a fragile sound, but it was real. "Life's funny," she murmured. "You never know who's teaching who." I squeezed her hand gently. "Goodbye, Mrs. Langford. Goodbye, Elijah." As I walked out of that hospital room, something inside me felt lighter, not because I'd finally had my closure, but because I'd finally let the pain rest. The hallway seemed brighter, the air warmer. For the first time in years, I felt peace instead of anger when I thought of her name. That night, I wrote again. Not an essay this time, but a letter I'd never send. I wrote. "To the teacher who once broke me, thank you. Because of you, I learned to find strength in silence. Because of you, I learned the difference between pain and purpose. And because of you, I now understand that forgiveness is not forgetting, it's remembering without hatred." The next week, I went back to the hospital, but her room was empty. The nurse told me she'd passed 2 days earlier, peacefully, in her sleep. I stood there for a long moment, staring at the empty bed. I felt no sadness, just a quiet ache, the kind that comes when something unfinished finally finds its end. Before I left, the nurse handed me a small envelope. "She asked me to give this to you, if you came back," she said. Inside was a short note, written in shaky handwriting. "Elijah. You taught me more than I ever taught you. Thank you for giving me the peace I couldn't give myself. Margaret Langford." I folded the note carefully and tucked it into my pocket. Outside, the sky was painted gold by the setting sun. I stood there, watching the light fade, thinking about how time heals what pride destroys. Maybe that's what forgiveness really is, not erasing the past, but but transforming it into something that no longer hurts to remember. And as I walked away, I whispered a prayer for her. Not out of pity, but gratitude. Because somewhere between pain and mercy, we both found a way to become human again. Sometimes, life circles back in the most unexpected ways, not to reopen old wounds, but to show how far we've come from them. I used to believe my pain defined me, that her cruelty had written my story. But now I see it differently. Her words shaped me, yes, but not the way she intended. They became the soil where I grew my strength, my voice, my purpose. And standing there, beneath that quiet sky, I finally understood, forgiveness isn't about who deserves it. It's about who needs to breathe again. And that person was me.